Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. It's a very important day. It's a very important topic, and we are very excited to really kick off this debate to look at better together. So going green is obviously like a very important ambition, especially for the European Union. As you know, the European Union wants to become the first carbon neutral continent in the whole world by 2050. This comes with a lot of important national targets, binding legally targets for pushing this, and we have heard from all our fantastic speakers how digital technologies and innovations can push the green transition, the energy transition, but also the protection of natural ecosystem and its biodiversity. So, my name is Giorgia Epicoco. I work on sustainability policies in the Brussels office. I'm very excited to bringing to you this important, diverse, and inspiring panel of experts. So today is not about me. So let me introduce you our first speakers. Wojciech Wosecki, who is a circular economist expert. Please join me on stage. Sevim Aktas, who has founded the EU Green Deal Brief and brings EU policymaking closer to everyone's daily lives and habits. Omar Richardson, who is the CTO of Simula Consulting. And last but not least, Professor Maslin, studying and teaching Earth System Science at the UCL. So guys, what are we going to talk about today? I think it's important we set the scene a little bit. What we want to achieve together. You all bring different views, different ideas, different backgrounds, and it's important, we make that, like understandable for everyone, of course. We're not so far away from 2030. We know that in 2015, all United Nations member states agreed to achieve 17 SDGs. The European Union has really empowered its member states, obviously, to lead the way on that trajectory. We are only 14 days away from COP28, so the momentum is really there to bring about, ideas and points to discuss. So we need to really tackle climate action in unison. We need to find ways from the different perspectives, from the different industries, on really how to bring and capitalize know-how, strengths, technology, and give a platform, a place for everybody to express their voices and opinions on the challenges that climate change has brought about, but especially the opportunities. So we're here to talk about the opportunities, okay? Solutions. So let me start with Sevim. You really dedicate your life to policy making, but not only. You try to translate what is usually seen as difficult, complex concepts and jargon, especially from the European Commission, really into understandable notions for those inside and outside what we call in Brussels the bubble. So as we said in the beginning of the current mandate of the European Commission in 2019, they brought about this policy framework, which is called the EU Green Deal, and they decided to push out a lot of laws and binding targets for member states, but also beyond the European Union. So if you could give us, like a glance, an idea of, what the European Union has done until now, what are the progress? And if you think, like the ambition to achieve the green transition is there and all the steps are in place.
That's a really big question. It would be an entire lecture just to give an overview about the European Green Deal. But hello, everyone. Nice to be here. And thanks for the invitation. The European Green Deal, I mean, it's a multifaceted, completely comprehensive policy framework with targets, but also with measures on how to reach these targets, right? And we're talking about all sectors and inevitably touching every corner of our society. Is it buildings, mobility, industry, food? A very big question. So. Essentially, in all the different areas, the European Commission, so me and my colleagues, have been formulating policies on how to implement and reach our targets. And to translate all of these different measures a little bit more understandably, like seeing the regulations, let me say, I decided to create this Instagram account where I make these topics a bit more accessible, thinking of me essentially a couple of years back during my studies, where I was sitting in my, mechanical engineering classes. And if someone would have talked anything about the EU, I couldn't have cared less, really. But that switch happened to me, in particular with the EU Green Deal, and to make that topic more accessible to the people who are able to also implement certain things. I'm talking to my fellow engineers, my fellow peer students that graduated with me. I try to make it more accessible in how they can see their role in this entire picture of the European Green Deal, which sounds very, like high level, very like a lot of like abstract, essentially, to make that a bit more tangible and for them to see the opportunities there. It's been a great pleasure, I have to say, and something that I've been honored to do, to bring more people on board on that transition.
Just a very quick follow-up on that. If you could define, the EU Green Deal in like just a few sentences, what would you say to our audience?
The EU Green Deal, it's, I don't want to use the words that, like our EU politicians tend to use, which is just transition and green transition and digital, etc. But what I liked about the previous presentations, for example, is essentially every answer or every measure that we provide as in a policy, it's inevitably linked with digital solutions. I, for example, work on the construction industry and building industry. There we're talking not only about digitizing the supply chains, but providing digital passports for the building or the construction products, for example, the entire data system that's around that, the interoperability around these different systems, etc. So I've been just loving the solutions that have been presented, because inevitably those are the enablers, not only for policy, informing policy making, but also putting it forward. I didn't answer your question. Green Deal for me is like opportunities, to be honest, very bluntly put, solution-oriented, and something that I noticed in Europe, we love to talk about challenges. They're very valid, but there's so much brilliance and intellect that can come together to solve these challenges. And what I've seen in the last 4 years of the progress that have been taking place, I've been incredibly amazed. So looking to 2030 and 2040, I cannot even imagine what's going to be possible in the solutions that we can create together.
Thank you, Sevim. And I want to, really reconnect from what you said, because right now we're looking at implementation. The EU Green Deal is a set of policies, but now we need to implement. Now it's the time, especially looking at 2024 and the next cycle of the European Union institutions. So, Mark, coming to you, because you take a different twist, a different angle on the green transition. We know that the EU Green Deal, in fact, is not coming, did not come, and will not come without challenges and difficulties. So there is need for a lot of work on implementing the EU Green Deal and its targets. And in your view, what are the top challenges that come to mind in pushing the green transition from all sides in Europe? And what are some of the recommendations you might have for effective measures to overcome such issues?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. So I'm going to set up some of the challenges, but also all the solutions that Huawei and other companies are actually producing, and particularly including the European Green Deal. The key thing to remember is in the next 2 decades, absolutely everything is going to change. And I mean that. Everything in society will change, and hopefully for better. So let's set up the scene. So we have global warming of 1.2 degrees already. Okay, we've seen this all around the world. This year alone, we've had heat waves in North America, China, Southern Europe. Last year, we had huge floods in Pakistan that affected 30 million people. We're seeing it. Normal people are seeing this actually happening. And I think the key thing there is that we are in this great city of Paris. And as a Londoner, I am going to say that, okay? It's hard as a Brit to be nice about the French, okay? However, in 2015, the French did something amazing, which was got the leaders of the world to agree to the Paris Agreement, which was we're going to limit climate change to 2 degrees and with an aspirational target of 1.5 degrees. Now, we're already at 1.2, and trust me, I will take a bet, 2023 will be the warmest year on record. So the question is, how are we doing on emissions? Well, unfortunately, in year 2022, we still emitted the most greenhouse gases of any year in human history. So we haven't even started to bend the curve, despite the negotiations, despite all the COP meetings. But huge changes are occurring already, as you saw with the Green Deal. So for me, the most important thing is that we have to understand all those changes that are going to happen. We are already moving to renewable energy. Now, we know that there's huge growth in solar, wind, EVs, and, of course, battery technologies, driven by Europe and by China, huge uptakes. Except the base load of energy in the world, 80% of it is still from fossil fuels. Why is this? My students go, hang on, we're doing so amazingly in renewables, because that's just eating up the increase in energy. And this is the challenge. By 2050, we will at least double the energy requirement around the world to lift huge numbers of people out of energy poverty, but as also we saw, all of our new technologies are more and more energy hungry. So that means by 2050, we have to produce 180% of today's energy as renewable. That's the challenge. Now, the great thing is, if you imagine this challenge, if we electrify everything that we can, so that's heating, that's transport, everything we can, forget about the hard bits, flying and things like that, but just the bits we can. If we did that, we will automatically save 40% of the energy, because electricity is so much more efficient than fossil fuels. I'll give you an example. An EV car wastes about 15 to 20% of its energy. Petrol car wastes about 65 to 70% of its energy, okay? So we're moving to more efficient energy sources. But, again, those sources of energy aren't constant. They're not switching on. They have highly flexibility. They have huge amounts of variability. So we need digital solutions. We need all that AI. The classic ones that Carl and Tony were presenting earlier on, showing how Huawei and other companies are actually helping houses to monitor that, even to make money out of the grid by going, hey, now they're going, we can sell it back. There's also certain countries in Europe, they'll pay you to take energy off their hands at certain points of the day because they have too much. So this is the incredible opportunities. And so, again, we're moving into this incredible new area. Also, I would say there's so many efficiencies. Heat, waste heat. I saw this in Carl's presentation. Brilliant. Waste heat is essential. We should be using it. Many cities do use that heat to actually heat and cool homes, but many other places don't. Oh, and by the way, if you want one stat to take away from today, guess what? 3% of all electricity in Western countries is used by supermarkets. When I heard that, I just went, what? Okay. And of course, a lot of that is wasted, okay? So for me, again, yeah, I know. Particularly, why do they have their freezers on all the time when they could just be doing it when they have cheap electricity? So the key thing is, this is a revolution that's happening, okay? The renewable energy revolution is here. We just need the digital technologies to actually push it forward, to empower people, to make sure that people can make the right decisions without having to actually consciously do it, okay? People are busy. People have complicated lives. They can't literally be on their phone all the time going, ooh, now do I switch my radiators on now? Or, ooh, you know, you just get the system to do it. I also want to say that it's a huge opportunity to save money. The Danfoss report that was launched last week actually showed that if we do this properly in Europe, the Green Deal with collaboration with incredible companies like Huawei, then we could save the actual customers 20 billion euros per year by 2050. So guess what? Everything's going to change, and AI, renewable energy, is going to be right at the heart of the transformation of our society, which we are living through probably the most amazing time in history. I'm just hoping we get it right.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. And I'm very glad that you focused on solutions. I asked you about challenges, and instead, you twisted around and focused on solutions. And this is what we are here for. So thank you so much for that. You mentioned, of course, like digital solutions, a digital revolution. Digital revolution, where does it come from? For me, it's innovation. Innovation, and, like in Huawei, we say passion unlocks potential. And I think that's like a very important message that the company pushes forward, and it's an important message that we should all embrace here today. So Wojtek, really, let's talk about technology and technological solutions and technology innovation. So I have a couple of questions for you, not just one. So I would like to ask you, what do you think, or what do you say will be the role of further technological innovation in the EU to push the net zero economy, which is a very big topic nowadays? And also, how influential do you think it will be in making Europe carbon neutral by 2050? And last, if you could think of a key development, which one would you bring to the table?
I'll give it a go. Thanks
Please
for
try.
having me. It's lovely to meet you all, and I'm so pleased to be sitting amongst great panelists, and it was a pleasure to listen to all the exciting developments that are happening. So, to answer your question, I'll of course start broadly. And I came here from Sweden. Sweden is famous for its, clean grid and climate leadership. Thanks to a lot of different factors that has to do with politics, education, a lot of innovation, but also access to resources, like biomass, all the hydro plants, wind and solar. But I'm originally from Prague, from Czech Republic, which is a totally different story. And that's what we need to understand about Europe and Europe going green. It's a lot of countries that have different starting points, that have different visions, that have different conditions. Czech is very industrial country, one of the most in Europe next to Poland. It's extremely energy intense. Most of our energy is from coal and gas and nuclear. So the thing about tech that I really like is that, Czech and Sweden, they can have their disagreements. Europe can have its disagreement. We have the European Commission, that's great, but still national governments. And they sometimes couldn't be more far from each other when it comes to aligning. But tech, machines, they don't have ambitions. They don't have no agenda, right? There's a problem to be solved, and a solution that can tackle it. If it's scalable, if it's profitable, it will happen. And that's what gives me a lot of hope. That's why I believe that, technology and innovation has had an immense role on European journey towards carbon neutrality, and it will continue to have that in various roles, like we've heard today: storage of energy, distribution of energy, creation of energy, but also, and more important, I would say, energy savings and energy efficiency. And if I would summarize it, I think we don't have any other choice. We'll be 10 billion people in 2050. We'll be richer, we will consume more. We need to do more with less. And tech can help us to get there. Tech can help us to produce more energy while producing lower carbon emissions. Tech can help us to produce cleaner energy at lower costs. And what I liked about Huawei is the initiative about more bits, less VATs. Because that's exactly what we need. Because we'll process a lot more data, we'll consume a lot more energy. We have to be smarter. But one really, really important thing about all this, and that's also about my title, I'm a circular economist. Energy is just very important, but one half of the coin of European green journey. The other half, which we don't talk about enough, is our relationship with resources and waste, and how we handle everything. How do you make a wind turbine? Do you know how much steel, aluminium, rare metals do you need? Do you know how much waste do we produce? Do you know Europe is extremely dependent on imports as well. So we have to close the loop locally. We have to make sure that we work better with what we already have. We cannot recycle our way out of this. We have to redefine our relationship with resources. The demand for batteries will increase 30% every year for the next 10 years, driven by e-mobility. And that's amazing. We need that. But how do we get cobalt these days? You don't want to know. So we need to, but there's a lot of it out there already. We need to work better with what we have. And if we combine the energy transition and the circular transition, that's a winning strategy. That's when we, I believe, will go green, and we have to do it together. And to conclude, I am not that worried about tech. I believe, it's been here and it will serve us great. But where we need a lot more is, as Europe, work better together, get aligned politically and also on a societal level. Thanks.
Thank you, Wojtek. I mean, the excitement on this panel is really fantastic. Thank you, guys, because you're really bringing a positive outlook to the debate. And so I want to come now to Omar and to discuss something that is actually very close to my heart. I happen to live in Brussels, but I'm Italian, and as you might know, Italy is the richest biodiversity country in Europe, very lucky. So we know that now technological solutions can also help protect biodiversity. We have seen also from the presentation of Gary on the Tech for All initiatives, and really it's revolutionary what digital can do to conserve nature. So can you share with us your key consideration when looking and integrating digital tech into this field, and which projects you have been seeing having a significant success from a smart approach to nature conservation?
Thank you, Giorgia. Yeah, I would love to. So a little bit about the company I work for. So I came today from Oslo, Norway, and I work for Simula Consulting. And Simula Consulting is an R&D consultancy firm that focuses on bridging the gap between science and technology. And the reason I mention this is because I think that there's a lot to be gained there. There's a lot of academic attention from a lot of different researchers that focus on, okay, we have a world right now, we have a lot of resources from a technological point of view, from an intellectual point of view, but we have even more challenges, right? And how do we overcome those challenges? So very many people are working in very many different areas, and one of them is tech. But just because something is published in a paper somewhere doesn't mean it has found its way into society, right? Researchers are generally a bit ahead of the curve, right? They're the state of the art, they're building the innovation, but then the innovation has to make its way through, well, the world. And I think we as Simula Consulting, we're trying to support that mission. Other companies like Huawei are trying to support that mission, right? Trying to get, okay, we can do all of these things. They've been proven, we have proof of concepts, but how do we get it out there? How do we make sure that it's actually to the benefit of humankind? And to circle back to your question, how do you integrate tech with nature? How do you make sure you build something that's beneficial? I think that maybe the key principle is that you have to care. You have to care about the problem. This is the most important thing. You have to care about not just the specific technical issue, but the entire problem. And the team that you're working with, you need to know who you're working with. You need to build a consortium that's strong, and everyone needs to care. So if you're looking at, well, let's say, for instance, one of the projects that Gary was mentioning, right, the Nature Guardians. They've done very interesting things in very different places around the world and also with different applications. And then you see it's a place where tech and governance and wildlife reservation all comes together. And you can tell that the people care because the solutions that they build, everyone is involved in all of them, right? If you look at, okay, how can we make sure that we can actually intervene if something is happening right now? Well, that has an implication on the tech side and on the governance side, right? You need to set up quick algorithms that are able to perform some work offline before they send it online. You need to be able to make sure that if, for instance, the network is down for someone or not, you have some backups. And that needs to be thought through, and not just by the engineers, but also by, for instance, the people that are going to respond to potential threats. So I would say that that's the most important thing. Make sure that everyone who works on this understands the problem, is on the same level, and has open discussions. Another thing that I would say is important if you're looking at really implementing tech in nature is that you build something that goes with nature and not against it, right? So it's easy to think that, well, just building something to stop something. Maybe if you see a tree and you're trying to build a wall around it to make sure it doesn't exceed its bounds, that you're done. But it won't work, not with a tree and not with most other elements of nature either. I mean, you can't stop it, right? And you shouldn't try to stop it either. I mean, you're trying to help nature. You're trying to make it develop better in different ways, right? So generally, the challenges that we're trying to solve now are human-made, right? And you would say that trying to resolve those challenges with technology would in that sense be easy, but you can't really revert things. You're going to have to build something else. And whatever you build, you're going to have to make sure that you go along with nature. And finally, I think what is the most important thing practically when you're rolling things out is to be realistic and to adapt. So you're going to build something. We're probably starting from some sort of a model, some representation of reality, right? And clearly you care and you've built something that seems to be beneficial, and then you put it out there and then it turns out that it doesn't work. And it might work for 80% or something, but the 20% that makes it fail is still enough to make it fail, right? So at that point, what's key is to not just push it or give it up, but the key is to investigate quickly, okay, what's wrong? Why doesn't it work? Build something that resolves that, integrate it, and deploy it again. And the second time, I can guarantee you it's not going to work either. But the problem is, nature, reality is immensely complex, and technology, we can do great things, but we're just going to have to make sure that we look at the situation and build something that's accustomed to what we're trying to solve. And once you've got it working, and you're looking at it, and it does its job very well, then you can just sit back and relax, and 2 months later, it'll be broken again. Because nature changes, reality changes. And then at that point, again, you're going to have to look, and you're going to have to adapt, and you're going to have to build something else. So yeah, I hope that answers your first question.
It does.
Great. And if you're talking about initiatives that are successful, that display these principles, well, like I mentioned, Gary had a few of them that I think are very powerful. One that I could talk a little more about is the AI-powered fish gate that Gary also presented. So my team was responsible for the artificial intelligence behind it and the software setup behind it. So we learned firsthand how easy it is to make bad stuff and how you have to focus and focus and improve and improve. And if you keep doing that, then you can build something that solves a problem. Because what we've done now, together with the other partners in the Huawei consortium, is build an AI-powered fish cage that is able, with a very, very high recall accuracy, to separate the invasive species of the humpback salmon from the Atlantic salmon and make sure that the river management and river biodiversity is maintained. And what I would say is exemplary of that project on a bigger level is that it solves something that was simply impossible to do before. The humpback salmon has been an issue for quite a while now. And the population is exploding. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. Every second year, you see more of them. And there are pictures of people, 5 Norwegian people in a river up in northern Norway with nets trying to fish out the salmon. And Norway has well over 20,000 rivers and not that many people. So you can imagine that there's no way to solve a problem like that ever. In addition, when you actually do fish out the fish and you separate them manually, you're also killing an incredible amount of Atlantic salmon. So it's simply not tractable. And AI is something that has made this problem tractable. And I think that this is very important to take into account when you're looking at the future. Now, we can't just mitigate things quicker because technology is more available to everyone, we can mitigate things we couldn't ever before, right? And AI is part of that. We can do things that weren't possible. And tech by itself can't solve all the problems that we have. But the increasing amount of things, I mean, the outlook is really good from my perspective. We're really seeing more and more possibilities.
Thank you, Omar. And you really said something that like strikes with me, which is we need to care. We all need to care. You know, we all come from different backgrounds, but you know, like these kind of problems, like problems connected to climate change, cannot be tackled, you know, alone by only technologists, engineers, economists, academics, whoever we have in it. Like it's something we have to do all together, and that's why the theme of today is Better Together, Europe Go Green. So on this point, I want to actually pick all of your brains, and I will start with Sevim. We really live in this social media era, right? So we need to make sure that communication is boosted, especially when we talk about the green transition. It's important that everybody gets to communicate, learns about it, but also learns that there is an opportunity for everybody to look at the problem with a different mindset. So what, in your view, are the most effective ways for people to get engaged, voice their ideas, big or small that they might be, to help support and shed the light on the green transition, the challenges that we talked, the solutions that we discussed today, and all the progress or lack thereof?
With one word, it would be implementation, like really getting on board with implementing all the projects, the solutions, etc. Because what we do have already is a lot of talks around it. All the solutions are clear. We have multiple reports on the internet saying exactly what a strategy should look like of either a company, a nation, the world, etc. It's all existent already. What it now comes down to is implementing it. And I really like what you were saying. It's you touched on multiple things that we called exactly the rebound effects, like avoiding rebound effects. That I think is more on the policymaker side. It's one thing that we really look into very closely when we put incentives for industries. Would these lead to rebound effects? Like, for example, resource question that you mentioned, the circular economy aspect, etc. Being able to look into the future when we're putting certain incentives. I mean, regulations, it's a 10-year time frame minimum that we put a regulation in place. But as we have seen, like this year alone, with ChatGPT completely changing the way that we're working in a couple of months only, I cannot imagine even what 2030, 2035 will look like. And being able to imagine this future in our head of all these different possibilities, being able to imagine solutions not with the tools and the thinking of today, but what it really can look like in the future, I think is something that can be, I would love to see more. And not reinventing the wheel, essentially. And adaptability. So I'm mentioning all these three keywords, so rebound effect, adaptability, and not reinventing the wheel in the implementation, in a sense that all the solutions are out there already. Like every time I have a thought to myself and I say, well, I think this is brilliant, I take a pause and I'm like, take a second, Sevim. I'm quite sure that someone else in this world had exactly the same idea and even took the effort to formulate it in a very nice way on the internet somewhere and shared it. And I think that's this humbleness, let me say, of doing the search, of not trying to reinvent the wheel, because something that I observe a lot is many people are doing exactly the same things. I'm looking in my own industry, for example, the stakeholders that I talk to, and I'm like, have you guys talked to each other? You know, like, so really collaboration here is the key word. Talking to each other, sharing the knowledge and sharing the best practices, sharing the challenges that we're facing, because it's incredible how much double work it's being done. And being anti-fragile, or being able to adapt to the circumstances around us. Like, we're really building solutions in the sense that it's not that they break. I mean, also from a government perspective, like we put policies out there that, you know, break immediately. Like, look what happened with COVID, and like all these external influences are coming in, and like we do completely again need to reinvent the wheel, because like it's not adaptable enough what we've put out there yet. So having these concepts in mind while working on the implementation side of things, I think would be my go-to answer in how to do it. And I try to do my part by making the topics more accessible for young people. So my audience is young young professionals or students, for them to see the opportunities and what they can do. Is it in policy making or companies or sustainability jobs, etc., but more really, and I cannot highlight it enough, on the implementation side of things.
Wojtek, you want to go next?
Thanks. Yeah, I want to start with a question to the audience. You know, when we think of how do we get people on board, how do we engage them, how many of you do you feel guilty about your daily consumption habits, about eating a burger, having a hot shower? Have you ever felt that feeling? Raise your hand. Anyone? Yeah? I see a few hands. Some don't. That's good. Good for you. But I feel, you know, we are bashing people. We're putting them in a box of you are a consumer, and basically no matter what you do, it will always be kind of okay or bad. You know, we buy avocado or eco avocado, but people feel often just, you know, kind of like they don't really know how to take part in this, and they think then they make their sustainability choices with their wallet, with their money. But I like what you said, that, you know, I think, how do we get people on board? What do I try? Why do I post so much on LinkedIn? Is to turn people into sustainability champions and show them you can have a lot bigger impact with your work, with the amazing projects that you're doing about in your daily life, in your community, as a citizen. And I think, you know, the more people realize this, the more great bottom-up, top-down stuff will keep happening.
Thanks a lot. Mark, you want to go? Give it a try?
Sure, I'm literally going to follow on from that and say probably the most important thing you can do is talk about the challenges. Talk about climate change. Again, we don't. Talk about the social changes. And I think what is really important, and actually what a lot of our politicians have failed to do, is provide that vision. We can all see 2030. We can all see the green revolution. We can see how it's going to save people money. It's going to make their homes better. It's going to make their lives better. It means they're going to have to actually have less sort of like commutes and things like that. We can see all of that, but we don't communicate it. And I think what's really interesting is that we always think that the public are the issue. And really interesting, what we found out during COVID, and this is where academics basically had to change their mindset, was before COVID, we all assumed that the weakest link in a global crisis was going to be the public. Nah, turned out to be government. Because when you actually explain to people, we need you to do this, this is good for all of you, please look after your fellow citizens, they did it. 100% coverage, okay? So face masks, staying at home, all of that. Boom. It was government that went, oh, I'm not sure. What we're going to do? That was the weakness. And so again, I think sometimes we, like you said, we blame the consumer. No, what we should be doing is providing that vision, providing that future that shows them that actually being green, having sort of renewable energy, having this new future is going to be good for everybody. The only way we can do that is by communicating. And it's fantastic. The examples that Omar and sort of the others have shown, really very positive. And this whole thing about scare stories about AI, are they going to take over the world? Nah, you know, come on. You know, we should be actually providing all the positive stories. And I know they don't sell newspapers, okay? And yes, I've been in the communication business for decades. I know that. But we have to push those positive stories. We have to push that image. And we have to push back against all the negative stuff on social media, all the politicians that think that fear is going to stoke up things, and just push ahead with doing what, again, is going to be the revolution for humanity.
Yeah, that eco-anxiety that we hear so much about, right? Omar, some last thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I think I would like to echo what Sevim has been saying. I think that she makes a really good point about not reinventing the wheel. Because what I think is amazing about the time that we live in now and the time that we're going towards is that technology is becoming more democratic. And the tools that we have at our disposal right now, you can build amazing things with them. And I mean, I admit sometimes we go a bit left and right in terms of openness of different tools, but all in all, I think things as an individual and as a small group, you have so much more technological power at your disposal now than we used to have 10 years or 20 years or 30 years ago, right? And I think at least for our project it shows, because the people who've been building the technology, all of the companies or organizations involved are quite small, really, all 30 people max or something, because that's all you need. There's so much out there if you rely on what other people have built and what other people have put available publicly, then you can do a great job. And I think realizing that as an individual or as a small group, you have the power to build things that drive change, to improve situations of yourself and of others. I think that's the best message, to me at least, that I would like to hear.
Thank you so much, guys. And before closing this panel, I mean, I have had so much fun asking you questions, but I would like to give the floor to our audience. So if there are some questions, please go ahead. Feel free to challenge.
Hi, Elise Quevedo here. We often speak about collaboration when it comes to tech and going green. And after today, it's more than clear that without working together, reaching the next level can be challenging. So in what specific areas is more collaboration needed? And how do we move forward to actually see real results?
Who wants to go first? Be brave. Be brave. Omar, you go first.
Right, yes. So I will answer your question from a technological point of view then. In order to collaborate, I think the most important thing is to have standards, interoperability standards, right? You need to speak in certain aspects the same language. And not having that, I think, has hampered development in the past. But I see that changes are being made to improve that, right? So I think in this sense, open source has been the biggest force for moving technology forward since, well, I don't know how long. And I think that using the concepts of open source, reusing them also in different aspects of technology, like for instance academia, now you see this drive towards open access. And I think this is also very important and should be driven more, right? People have more, well, just making things available to everyone, to other researchers, but also to laymen in that sense, is allowing people to be more informed, be able to collaborate more, and have a certain standard that everyone agrees on and can move forward from. So I would say that that's one perspective. But
And I'm going to build on that because I think of standards, but also what I think we need regulators to come in and have compatibility. Again, if we build sort of like all this incredible tech, it's got to be able to talk to each other. It's got to be able to connect. Again, when we have to future-proof. So if I have solar panels on my house and I have a heat pump, I want them to be smart. I want them to be connected, but I might want to buy them from 3 different companies. And I might buy the AI from Huawei. And therefore, what I want is them to all be able to talk to each other and actually be able to plug them together. Okay? So again, I think regulation there. We also need that globally, because then it means that tech, when you make tech, you get the economies of scale, because you're just making the same tech for everybody because you know it works, and therefore it will work with all the different systems. And I'm not an engineer.
Thank you. Is there anybody else you guys want to add?
You know what, interoperability was one thing that I had in my mind immediately as well. When it comes to solution, that's literally the one thing that needs to be tackled, because it's a bottleneck for many, many, many different solutions that that it's hindering. So interoperability is number one thing.
Thank you.
Do we have some? Please, go ahead.
Thank you for your relevant insights. I love your question about collaboration. And I have a question about collaboration from a global point of view, because here today we are talking about Europe Go Green. But what do you think that we have to take or we have to learn from other areas in the world? I mean, we are talking a lot in Europe about regulation. We are talking about the standards. You were mentioned about double work in many topics. So, and this morning I heard the word humbleness, that I think is very relevant in life and also in the professional life. So what do you think that Europe could have to learn from other areas in the world about sustainability and going green?
Wojtek, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I love it. I love it because during my studies, I focused on tropics and subtropical areas and sustainability solutions there, and it's fascinating. We don't have the best recipe for a lot of things in Europe. We believe we do, and we're trying to export ideas that are sometimes even outdated. There is an immense inspiration from way back. Nature is a huge inspiration, I believe, when it comes to renewable energy and circular economy. That's billions of years old, but you have indigenous cultures with their approach towards, taking care of their environments. We can learn from that. And then you have these, here in Sweden, let's say, where I live, we're building a house or a little community, and they think, that's a huge thing for the city and sometimes even for the region. Whereas, in China or in Middle East, these projects that are happening there are on totally different scale, and we need that here too, and we don't do it enough. So when I saw the 1 gigawatt, power plant, that's what we need, and we need to learn how to do it over here and where to do it. We're not gonna do it with our old approach, I think. Yeah.
And to add up to that, it's going to be a bit of an unconventional answer, but joining this political sphere, let me say, there's one thing that I noticed on a technical level and on a political level. And on a political level, it seems that ego plays a very big role. And I think answering also your question when it comes to collaboration, something that would put us enormously forward is if we're able to put our ego to the side, or like the role of our positions to the side for a second, because it's not about you or me, it's about the goal that we're trying to reach here. And these annotations of like, oh, but it's my idea and I said it and that's why we should take it, like these type of emotional reactions, let me say, if we could get beyond these biases, that would incredibly help in more productive conversations also globally. It helps. I saw on a more technical level, it's a bit more practical. So I love that and I like to stay there. But globally, it's, and touching on the ego point, this is something that one of my professors said. He said, Europe is the ape who's trying to save the fish from drowning. But the context of the fish is the sea, so this is what it lives. So we're trying to apply our solutions everywhere else, which is not necessarily the right way to move forward. And keeping that in mind, so humbleness is one thing, and being able to put your ego aside, having an open ear and be truly able to listen is, I think, some of the skills that will allow us to work productively more together.
Thank you so much, guys. It was fantastic, very inspiring. Let's give it up for Omar, Sevim, Wojtek, and Mark. Thank you for having us.
And for you. Can I have a question?